Hi, my name is Debbie Clark Moderow. Today I'm going to be talking about my memoir, Fast into the Night, a woman, her dogs, and their journey north on the Iditarod Trail.
Hey everyone! Welcome again to AuthorStory. I'm Alexander Lim, your host, and for this episode, you adventure and dog lovers will be getting a real treat. I'm interviewing Debbie Clark Moderow, author of the book Fast into the Night, a woman, her dogs, and their journey north on the Iditarod Trail.
My memoir traces my 2 attempts at the 1,000-mile Iditarod Trail sled dog race. At age 47, I took on the challenge for the first time. 2 years later, in 2005, my dog team and I reached Nome at the finish line. I wrote my memoir to honor the dogs and make sense of the journey that we'd shared.
So Debbie, welcome. It's great to have you here on AuthorStory.
Well, thanks so much for having me.
Cool. So Debbie, what's your story that led you to this Iditarod adventure?
Well, we adopted a sled dog when our children, my husband and I adopted Salt when our children were 5 and 6 years old. And he was a retired Iditarod Husky. I was pretty down in the dumps at the time. I had just suffered a series of miscarriages. And a friend called and said, I have a present for you. And I said, I don't want a present. And he said, we're coming over. We have a dog for you. And I objected, but that dog walked through the door of our house and our family fell in love with him. Before you knew it, we needed to have another one. Our kids started mushing before Mark and I did.
Okay.
But we developed a backyard family dog team, and over the years it grew, and so did the fun.
Okay. So when did you start thinking, the Iditarod, this might be something I want to do?
Well, through our children, we had all learned all about the art of dog sledding over a good 10 years. And at that point, my son and daughter had run a race called the Junior Iditarod, which is a race where 14-year-olds start. That's the first chance they can do it. 14 to 18-year-olds run 150 miles with their dogs overnight. And so you have to have 10 dogs to do that. We had 2 kids doing it. So by the time the kids went to college, there were 20 dogs in our backyard. And it turned out that our son, Andy, between high school and college, worked for an Iditarod champion and ran the real Iditarod race with Martin Boozer's dogs. Under the finish line arch, he said, Mom, you have to do this. And I never considered running Iditarod before. It was too costly, too long, too dramatic, but I was looking at the empty nest, and my husband and I had with our kids and for them developed this backyard dog team, and both Andy and Hannah were on our way to college, and Andy said that to me, and I thought, well, I guess I will.
Okay.
So 2 years later, I ran the Iditarod.
All right, cool. So for the benefit of our listeners who don't know the Iditarod, what is it? What's this race all about?
Okay, so the Iditarod race is a 1,000-mile race. It starts in Anchorage, Alaska, or nearby, and it goes to Nome on the coast of the Bering Sea. Every spring in March, the first Saturday of March, a group of mushers, this year there were close to 85, I believe, set out on this journey. Now, of course, there's a very, very competitive group of people that does this at the front of the pack. I was trying to complete it with happy and healthy dogs. I wanted to go on the ultimate journey with our backyard dog team. That was my entire ambition. It was to honor the dogs.
All right, cool. Okay. So, would you know anything about the original inspiration for the Iditarod? I mean, from what I understand, it was based on something that happened in 1925.
Well, here's the thing. Joe Reddington came to Alaska and he came from the lower 48 back in the middle of the century. So I don't know exactly when he arrived, but by the time the 70s rolled around, he knew a lot about dogs, the art of mushing, and the fact that sled dogs really had charted a course through Alaska along a series of trails that had been used to support the gold mining operations in the middle of the state. Really, the Frozen Trail is the name of a book about Iditarod, and the dogs and the trail connected people throughout the centuries. Now, in 1925, lots of people are familiar with the serum run delivery that took place. The kids in Nome had come down with diphtheria, and there was no serum in Nome, and it was the middle of the winter, and plane travel was not reliable.
Right.
And so in 1925, a group of mushers relayed the serum from Nenana, just north of where the Iditarod Trail, or north of where the race starts now. They relayed the serum all the way to Nome and saved the children from this really deadly outbreak.
Wow.
Reddington really wanted to honor the trail, the history, and the dogs, and he founded the race in '73. And it is thriving today as an international, professional event.
Yeah, I mean, from what I understand, you've got guys from all over the world participating. You've got Norwegians, Swedes, just people all over the world just participating.
That's true. And it's not something you can just put on your bucket list and do, because it's really about the dogs, so you have to give at least 3-4 years to it if that's what you want to do, and you need to be mentored by a musher that really lives the lifestyle that we live. But there's a very, very dedicated group that does it year after year. I did it twice. My husband did it once. My son did it once.
Okay.
But this comes from years of living the lifestyle with sled dogs. They're really amazing athletes.
All right. Yeah, I got that. Because, I mean, personally, I mean, when I think about the Iditarod, I think, people who run this, they've really got to be hooked into the lifestyle to participate in the 1,000-mile race, through cold and rough terrain, rugged terrain.
Well, you're traveling with your 16 best friends, pretty much. I mean, those dogs, you know them in and out. In every dog team, there are leaders, the dogs that go out front of the line. Then there are team dogs. Wheel dogs have their own specialty. They run right in front of the sled. But there's also a social dynamic amongst a dog team that's a little bit like a family. You have the jokester, you have the best friends, you have the competitive dog, or really maybe a class of kids is a better description. So there's lots that goes on the line itself amongst the dogs, and it's up to the musher to understand them, to nurture them. Of course, we do a run-rest schedule where they're running, then they rest, then they run some more. Right. They're very well suited for it. Doing it as a human, it might be a bigger challenge. Well, it is a bigger challenge than what it is for the dogs.
Okay, that's interesting, because so it's not like you just get like 20 dogs and you can just put them in wherever. I mean, these dogs, when they're on the team, each of them has their own position, has their own position to fill, something like that.
Absolutely. Think of a sports team. You have a pitcher and a catcher and a first baseman. You have leaders. You have swing dogs right behind them. But you don't leave a leader up all day long every day. You change them around. And so you need to have 6 leaders on a team of 16. That's really a nice number. So you switch them out. There's a lot of excitement for the dog that goes first, but there can be a lot of pressure. So some dogs thrive on pressure, some don't. You just have to really work with them and understand what each individual is about, and then manage the team dynamic to keep everybody very happy and hydrated. And when it's going well, there's nothing like it. You just think, wow, I can't believe I'm in this incredible wilderness with these very, very inspiring dogs.
All right, cool. So let's talk a little bit about your dogs. I mean, like me, I'm a bit of a dog lover myself. I mean, I've owned small breeds like Dachshunds and Chihuahuas and a couple of mongrels. But huskies are a huge breed, aren't they? What makes them suited for such work, like running like hundreds of miles at a stretch?
Well, our dogs are actually what you would call mixed breeds or mutts.
Oh, okay.
Uh, they're Alaskan Huskies. They've been bred over decades and decades to be well suited for this. They're all different colors. Some have floppy ears, some have ears that stand up on top of their heads. And they have double coats, which means they shed, and that's so that they have the insulation from a double coat for the northern life.
Right.
They typically have very tough feet, and they love to run. When we don't breed litters that often, but when we do, and it comes time to put a pup in harness, which for the first time we might do at 9 months of age, we put them in harness, and it's as if they've been running for hundreds of years. They just are pulling immediately. It's kind of like throwing a ball for a Labrador into a lake or the ocean. They just swim, and you don't know how they ever learned how to swim because you happen to know they've never swum before. That's what it's like when we put these guys in harness. They're so ready to go.
All right.
And
cool.
And they do it. They live outside, so they get very accustomed to the cold. What's hard on them is heat. Now, heat for a sled dog is anything over about 20 degrees. So they do much, much better when it's from 20 degrees above zero to 20 below. That's the window in which they really love to function.
All right, cool. So what does it take to I don't know, call it own a husky? I mean, these are big, powerful dogs, need a lot of exercise. But what other things do people need to keep in mind when they're handling a dog like this, when they're owning a dog like this?
Well, my best leader is lying at my feet right now. She's a wonderful pet, and she lives outside with the rest of the team and runs whenever we go running. So they're very, very versatile animals. It is a lifestyle. We have 28 dogs living outside our window right now.
Right.
365 days of the year. We are feeding them twice a day, watering them. We exercise them at least 5 days a week in the summer and the winter. I mean, this is what we do. This is our passion. It's kind of like owning, I tell people that to have 30 sled dogs is probably like having 6 horses.
Oh, okay.
We have a handler, basically a ranch hand that helps us as well. It's hands-on. We're everything from masseuses to trainers to hiking partners with them in the summer. We take them swimming in the summer. And in the winter, we build up miles in harness. We start out in August running them in front of a all-terrain vehicle.
Right.
3 miles at a time. In the end of the season, we've just ended the season now. In the end, we were running on 60 and 70-mile runs.
Wow.
And a few weeks ago, I was on a book tour for a long time, but we came home and managed to get off on a 6-day camping trip. We spent a couple nights in a lodge in the middle of that, and we went 250 miles, which is a very, very easygoing pace for that amount of time. But it was just wonderful to be out on the trail away from everything else with the dogs.
Wow, that sounds pretty wonderful. That sounds pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, so the Iditarod, the race, in the trail, it's not like, driving down the freeway. I mean, this is natural terrain. You've got snow. It can get pretty hazardous. So you and the dogs, you need to trust each other. The dogs need to trust you, and you need to trust the dogs. What does it take for the team, the human-dog team, to function well?
Well, it's a very multi-dimensional sport. You need to understand your dogs really well, and they need to understand you. So I want to add one thing. When you do the Iditarod, you pass through 22 checkpoints.
Okay.
And you send out supplies for yourself and the dogs to each of those checkpoints in something called drop bags. So as you go down the trail, you stop at those checkpoints, and your dog food, your massage oil for massaging them, your food, it's all waiting for you. And really, every musher has a different plan. We all work with our dogs in a little bit different way, and what you send out on the trail is what you use. There are also veterinarians at every single checkpoint. They go over each dog and make sure everybody is healthy. So the way you build trust is you set up your routine long before you do this, and you practice it. So when my dogs come into a checkpoint, they know that I'm going to give them straw right away, and they lie down, and and they settle down. Then they know I'm going to feed them. They know I'm going to massage them. I'm going to look at their feet. I'm going to figure out what each dog does. They probably also know, well, they do know several days into Iditarod, that someone's going to come up and greet them and listen to their heart with a stethoscope and ask me, if I have any questions, or if I'm worried about anybody. So, it's all a matter of routine. On the trail, I stop and snack them every 2 hours. They know that. They know that that's going to come. So it's all a matter of, it's almost like understanding your tennis partner, or I'm trying to think of another sport, or just going on a long hike with your best friend and setting up camp to spend the night at a campsite and coming back. If you do this repeatedly, you know each other well enough, or a dancing partner, each other's moves, that's how the whole thing builds.
I see. And so I see. So what I'm getting from here is that, this is not just an instant thing. You can't just get like someone else's dog, put him in your pack and run with you, sort of like a spare tire. You really have to build a relationship with your dogs.
That's really what it's all about. That the relationship with the dogs. And I know that one dog, when her ears are up, I know that we're coming up either on another dog team, or there's a wild animal around the corner. I mean, that's how she acts when she smells something new and different that's coming. Another dog, when her ears go up and she looks at the dog running next to her, I know that she's unhappy with that dog. She's about to needle her friend and say, go faster, or quit bugging me, or I want to run with somebody else. So each dog is an individual. So you also have to understand, you've got the group dynamic, but you have to understand what makes each animal tick as well.
Cool. So are you up all this time with the Iditarod? Do you get any rest breaks, or do you just like go straight until the end, from start to finish?
Oh no, you can't ask a dog team to run 1,000 miles straight, and you wouldn't be able to do it either. Right. You go into a run rest schedule again that you've practiced. So in my case, it took me 2 tries to get to Nome. I did not make the finish line on my first attempt. On my first attempt, I had a very, very conservative schedule. I was essentially running 6 or 7 hours at a time, and then resting maybe 8 or 9.
Oh, okay.
My efficiency wasn't what it should have been, and I was learning, and so were my dogs. And everything went really well until we got out on the sea ice in the middle of the Bering Sea. There's a 40-mile ice crossing, and my dogs lost their nerve. They just got intimidated by that landscape. For my next race, I tried really hard to establish a routine that was more consistent, believe it or not, with a little bit less rest, and a little bit more predictability of exactly what we were going to do. It went much better, but my dog team got intimidated in that same landscape as well, and got there. But it took some creativity to figure out what they needed and to wait out these shenanigans my dogs got into. But I had a little more confidence the second time that I knew what I was doing.
All right, cool. That's fantastic. I mean, these are, I must say, these are like insights that not just anyone can hear or read about. So that's interesting.
Well, a lot goes on out there. It's not all that simple. And I train only with positive reinforcement. I have a very respectful and lighthearted rapport with my dogs, and I had never asked them before to do something they weren't just crazy to do. And when they got on the sea ice that first time and they looked around, we were in a terrible headwind. All you could see was white. It was almost hard to figure out what was up and down. And my dogs that we train happily in the woods, in the forest, and there they were, and they were like, we are not doing this. And there was nothing I could do to convince them. And I was devastated with the broken bond with my dogs. Nothing worse could have happened to me out there.
Okay. So, Debbie, what is it that you got out of participating in Iditarod? What is it? What have you gained from participating?
Well, when I crossed underneath that finish line arch, there's a burled arch, a wooden arch that you reach at the end.
Right.
I knew that I had lived a story that I didn't even completely understand. It was a 2,000-mile effort. It had taken me years to get there. I was incredibly thrilled, but I knew it wasn't just that I'd gotten there. You know, I knew it had been something very difficult. And I wanted to make sense of the story, and that's why I wrote the book. And I also wanted to honor the dogs. I think what that finish line granted me more than anything was not this triumph. Yes, it was that, and I was really gratified. But it gave me a look back over where we had gone, and I realized that in the messy struggle, in those miles where we had gotten hung up on the sea ice and tried again, and then it happened again. And there are a bunch of trials I went through. You have to read the book to know all about them.
Okay.
But that's where the real heart of the journey lay. It was not actually in getting there. It was in working through the challenges. That's what made me closer to the dogs. That's where the lessons lay, where they showed me what they were made of and challenged me to figure out what I was made of. And I guess it really taught me more about how to be a better human. And the irony of it, of course, is that I learned that from my dogs.
All right. Cool, cool. So what about the book? I mean, when you wrote the book, did you get anything out of writing the book itself?
Oh, I got lots out of writing the book. A lot of these things that I'm telling you came to me during the course of writing the book. The book is really a memoir. It's not simply an adventure story. I was inspired by my own family. My son, as I told you before, challenged me to run Iditarod, and I said I will. And it was the continuation of a very wonderful family evolution of our family and these dogs. But as the stakes got higher, when I failed to reach Nome the first time and I tried again, I reflected a lot about how to find the courage to go out there and do it again. Did it matter that I make it to the finish? Why did I have to do it again? And in both life and in the book, I reflect a lot on my childhood and my life with my very wonderful and adventurous parents and what they taught me about what was important in life and how to navigate that territory between daring and doubt, which I definitely was trying to navigate. So it really is a story of family, my original family, then my present family, my little kids that had come of age with my husband Mark and myself and these wonderful dogs. So the writing of the book helped me figure out a lot about all of that.
Wow, nice. So it seems that, when you wrote the book, you went on kind of like a journey as well, some sort of reflection.
I did go on a journey as well, and I did get hung up in the middle of that journey, just like I did on the Iditarod Trail.
Okay.
And it's funny, my daughter at the time had just gotten her master's in creative writing at a Vermont College of Fine Arts, and she said, "Mom, you just need to go to school again. You need to go back to school." So I ran Iditarod when I was 47. I went back to school and got a master's in creative writing at age 50. Well, I graduated when I was 57.
Okay.
And that made all the difference. Going back to school and working with the faculty at Pacific Lutheran University really helped me learn the craft of writing. And when I got out of school with a manuscript, I sold the book pretty quickly to Houghton Mifflin Harcourt.
All right, cool. I got that. Okay. So what would you like for people to take away from reading Fast into the Night? What's the thing that you'd want them to get from the book?
Well, two things. I really wanted to share with readers my story about what it means to collaborate with a group of sled dogs. I think the sport is so inspiring, and these dogs are so magnificent. So I wanted to honor the dogs. But I really hope I've connected with people in different places that might want to set out to accomplish a big goal, and to offer the suggestion that it'll be hard to get there, but you got to try, because that is what life is really made of. And I feel so fortunate to have, I mean, really, it's a privilege to go out there and do a long distance sled dog race. It's expensive. It's a product of a free society. I mean, it's just a privilege. I'm very lucky to have been able to do this, but I think the lessons I learned and the journey I experienced could be applied to many different lives in many different places. So if I offer some encouragement to people thinking, wow, maybe I ought to try that, I feel like I will have done something good.
All right, cool. I got that. So is there anything else, Debbie, like other stories or topics that you may want to explore as an author in the future? I mean, you do have that degree in creative writing, don't you?
I do. I also, I'm working already on another memoir about revisiting places in my past in the context of climate change, because I was somehow put on this earth to enjoy and explore wild places, usually in the company of another species, whether it be just witnessing the bird migration. Right now, the birds are arriving back in Alaska, and it's always very profound moment for me when I see them, having flown from the southern hemisphere all the way up here to their breeding grounds in the Arctic. And but this place is changing, and I feel a responsibility as someone who's lived in Alaska for 37 years to explain that. I mean, the climate has really changed already up here. It will affect places and people all over the globe, and to return to landscapes where I've been in the past and see how they've changed and try to understand the dimensions of the changes we're facing, and also what my responsibility is towards expressing that and sharing my experience with it in Alaska, where change is happening quicker than in other locations.
Right.
I feel like that's really, I feel a calling to do that.
Okay, well, climate change is a concern presently, and so you know, kind of looking forward to that book, I reckon.
Well, I'm going to work on it. We'll see. Again, I'm in that hazy place between daring and doubt, but I think we're all there. We wish it wasn't happening, and we don't know what to do about it and how to speak out on that topic. And I feel like I better figure that out, because it's really important.
Right. Okay, cool. So, Debbie, in the last minute or so of this interview, are there any words of wisdom you'd like to share to inspire listeners? Anything you'd just like to say?
Well, the quote in the beginning of my book is from an artist called Constantine Brancusi. It's funny, I put it in my college yearbook, but I didn't really know what I was talking about until I ran the Iditarod. But the quote says, "To see far is one thing, going there is another." And I guess I find those words very inspiring, and I'd say go for the other. Try going there. I think these efforts are very, very worthwhile.
Okay, cool. I got that. Cool. So, in closing, the book is Fast into the Night, A Woman, Her Dogs, and Their Journey North on the Iditarod Trail. The authors are guest Debbie Clark Moderow, and you can find her book on her website at debbieclarkmoderow.com. That's Clark with C-L-A-R-K-E. So, Debbie, thank you very much for your time. Thank you very much for being on AuthorStory.
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Cool. And to our audience, if you'd like to follow our author interviews on YouTube, hey, go ahead and click the subscribe button. And if you like, go ahead and buy the book right now by going to the Amazon link in the video description below. So long for now, everyone. I'll be back next time on AuthorStory with another inspiring author.
Fast into the Night is an exploration of our shared adventure. It explores the tension that we felt between daring and doubt. It also delves into how my dogs taught me more along the way about what it means to be human. Thanks so much for reading.